Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to learn React, but by using an actual project, and we'll be trying to build an app that can display for us the list of all countries using an API, as well as country details whenever you click one of them. So this is the lookout of it, and also we have a theme switching, and it needs to be responsive as well. So how we can do that? First thing is that we'll be using TypeScript and not just plain JavaScript. So don't scream at the screen if you don't know anything about TypeScript. We'll take this one very easy and step by step as well. In the end, TypeScript is just JavaScript, but with extra little bit code to add interface typing strict. Okay. Now, next thing we'll be doing as well is that we'll be using a framework around React to build our app, and we'll be using Next.js because it gives us a lot of functionalities built in, and also it helps us with performance as we can build most of our application on the server side. So this will really improve our performance, our application. The third thing is that we'll be using Redux Toolkit to manage our state, okay? So you can use Context API if you want to, but in real applications and big applications, you don't do that. It's not enough. You always have complex states. Our app is not that complex, but we will still use Redux Toolkit so you get yourself familiar and used to use it as well. And don't worry if you don't have any experience with it. I will take it also step by step, and you'll be able by end of this video to create your own applications using Redux. Now we have two APIs we'll be using our application, one to list all the countries, another one also to list a country details. So what I decided to do in this video is that we'll be taking two approaches. One is using RTK Query, okay, which is a way or a powerful way or tool that help us in fetching data using some API, and also to help us with caching it as well, which is amazing thing for the performance of the application. The second API, which is the country details, for that one we'll just stick to Redux Thunk Async to handle that API call. So we'll be using the two approaches so you get yourself familiar with both of them. Now through this course, I will mention each section, and for each section I'll create a different branch in my GitHub. So you can get yourself started if you don't want to start from beginning or from middle, you can get yourself started. And what I will do, I'll be pushing the comments and also be recording all these steps so you get used to it as well. So I'll go to my repositories and create a new repository, and I'll call it, for example, countries, and I'll keep it public so everyone can access. Now our repository is created. Let's create our project, and we'll initialize our project using Next.js. So you can just copy this command right here. Go to your terminal, make sure you are in the folder where you want to create your application, and we'll paste the command. So basically npx create next app. So we're creating a boilerplate for our React application using next app, and we then would add latest. So install whatever latest version at this time of recording, and space, and then you can give your folder a name. So I'll just call it app for now, and let's hit enter. Okay, so I would say yes, I want TypeScript. I want ESLint, which help you with adding some rules about your coding. So I'll keep it, it's very helpful. I want to use Tailwind CSS for my style as well, so I'll keep it yes, yes. And yes, I want to use the app router, and I'll just give this one no, and to create the boilerplate for me. Great, now it's finished. I can just do cd app to go inside my project, and let's open it in my Visual Studio Code. So code dot, and that will open it for me in my Visual Studio Code, and that's the editor I use for my development. Okay, so I'll just close all these. So this is the project we get, and good thing I have a built-in terminal here, so I can just go to the terminal and I'll run my app and see what we have as a start. So npm run dev, and if you're wondering from where I'm getting this command, it is from the package.json, and you have here the scripts and you have dev. So npm run and dev. Okay, let's hit enter, and this should run it on my local host 3000. So I'll go back to my browser. I will try to access this. And there we go. This is the first thing we get when you run the boilerplate. So I don't need all this stuff. We'll do some cleanup. Okay. So I will go inside source, and that is my first page that you see all that content. I don't need any of these things, so I'll remove everything. Or just say hello for now. Okay, that's great. Remove this image from here as well. Next thing is in global CSS. I don't need all. We can go to our layout.tsx, which is the layout of your app. Okay, so for example, if you have common header or common footer or common sidebar, usually it goes in your layout.tsx. Okay, so we'll just do a few changes here. So I want to change my title. I'll say, for example, name it country finder, name it anything you like. And that's it for now. Okay, so now if I go back to my browser, there we go, everything's clean, no style, anything like that. Now what I will do, I want to commit this to the GitHub. So Control C, and I'll just open also another terminal, and we'll just follow the steps it asks us here. So first you have to run git init to initialize the GitHub on your folder. Okay, so let's do that first. So git init. Okay, second thing is that whatever changes you have locally, you have to add them. Okay, so we do git add all. Okay, and then we have to commit the changes. So let's go back there. So here for empty project, so they did this, just add some random file, which is readme file, then get commit. Okay, so let's get commit. We'll say this one for feature, my first commit. Okay, after that, next we have to push. Okay, but first we'll create a branch called main branch. So I will create a branch here, and then what we'll do next one is that we will link this one to the origin, okay, of our GitHub. So we'll do that. So I'm just copying and pasting the steps. Next thing now we will actually push. So we're going to push -u origin main, and main is our branch name. So now that one is pushed, let's go back to our GitHub. I will just hard refresh. And you can see now we have our code right here, okay? And we have the main branch. Great. And if you go back to our code, Visual Studio Code, you'll see here on the left, now you have a main here, and nothing on this source control means there are no changes currently in our local. So from next sections, for each section, we'll create a new branch, and we will start working on a new branch every time we start a new section. Now let's look at our design. So you can see it's very simple design. We have the header section, then we have the second part, which is the filters. Okay, so you have to filter, you have the option to filter by name and also by region on the right. And then the third section is the list of the countries. Okay, so we'll start from the top to the bottom. So let's first build the header section. And the header section, again, it's simple. It just have text and then a little bit functionality here we have to build so we can switch the theme. Okay, so keep in mind we're using Tailwind CSS, which give us few possibilities and easy styling as well. So let's jump to our code. Let's create a folder called components. And inside this folder, we will create another one called header. Okay, which should be our header component. And then we'll just create the actual component .tsx because we're using TypeScript. And what I will do, I will just generate the component. So roughly, and I will call it header. And then I will just go and import it in my layout. And the reason why this header, it is a shared component between two screens, okay? The details, which you can see here, right? So you have that header too, and also the main page, this list of the countries. That means this component is shared between pages, therefore it goes into the layout. Okay, so I'll go back to my Visual Studio Code, and I will go open the layout, and I'll import the header from component/header. And then what I will do, I want my header to be inside my body and before any other page, so on the top of every page. So these children here are your pages, okay? So I want my header to be on top of my pages, so it will be just before my children. So I'll put header there. Click save and let's go back to our UI. We go here and I don't see anything yet, and let me check first what I did wrong. So that's my header right there, and I actually have to run my command again. So npm run dev and let it run. So after my command run, there I can see now my header there, then my page hello right there. Great. Okay, now let's look at the design. So we have a simple header. It is a white background in light mode and some dark grayish color in the dark mode. Okay, and we have text on the left and button on the right. Now let's go back to our code. Let's go back to our header, and what I will do, I will just do some stylings using Tailwind. I don't want you to see me typing all this stuff, so I'll just close my other div. All what I did basically is that I have my main wrapper because I have the header going from the corner to the corner. Then my text is in the middle. So I need two layers, one to style the actual background color. Okay, so that's the one on the top. So BG white in normal mode, but in dark mode, and that is given from Tailwind CSS, you can use dark 2 points, that's mean in dark mode. So in dark mode, I'm doing a BG slate 600, which is little bit darker gray color. Okay, then I'm giving some shadow for my header as well. Then my second div is basically to center my items in the middle of the screen, and I'm using the container, and container helps me to have a responsive fluid div, okay, and the header. So in mobile it will not be crashing, but we'll make sure it is responsive and fitting in the screen. Okay, now this container does not make sure your contents are in the middle of the screen by default, so we have to do a change by ourselves, and we have to go to the config of Tailwind, okay, and we have to tell Tailwind CSS that we want this container to be centered. So the way we can do that is that we can go inside the theme, and I'll just close this. Inside the theme, I'll say the container, okay, should be an object. I want center property to be true. That's mean any class I use in my project with container, it will be always centered. Okay, so this is only good for you if you want anytime you use container, all those divs elements will be centered in the middle of your screen. Now let me save this and let's go back to my UI. Now other thing I want to do is add the text. Okay, so I'll just add a H1 right there for my text, and then I will add a button for now, random button. I'll just say click me. Okay, now let's go back to our UI and we go to country find, and there we go. So you can see the shadow of your header. Okay, and my button is here stick now because I didn't push it to the right yet. Now all these things until now, they are all server-side rendering, okay? They are not client-side rendering. So Next.js components by default are server-side components until you tell it that I want this component to be client-side. So there are scenarios where you have to do that and you have to make your components a client-side. For example, in our scenario here, I want this button, for example, when I click it, I have to click it, means I need to add a function handler which call onClick, okay, which is a user who have to trigger it. In this scenario, that means your components have to be a client-side component, okay? But I don't want my all header to be client-side only because that button in it, it is a client-side, okay? Reason why, this help with SEO, right? If your title of your page is there in your header, it's good if it's server-side rendered, right? So it will help with the SEO on the search engines as well. So what we can do, I can create a separate button only to handle my theming and everything, and that alone will be a client side. Great. Now Let's see how we can do that. Let's go back again here. I'll go inside components. I'll create a new component and let's call it theme button, for example. And let's add index.tsx and let's generate my component and I'll call it theme button. Okay. And what I want to do now is that I want to have some functionality that will handle for me the theming. But that will means I need to use some states and use effect and many things. So I don't want to have a problem here, which I have my logic mixed up with my UI rendering. Okay. So what I will do, I will use something in React with custom hooks, and I will build my own theme that will handle my own theme hook that will handle the theme switching. Okay, so what I will go inside app, create a new folder called hooks. Okay, and I'll create a new file called useTheme.ts. Okay, and in useTheme here I will create a hook for me that will help me to switch the theme. So first thing I need to do is I need to import useState and use effect, and you will know soon why we need that from React. And then I need to create my custom hook, so const, and always your custom hook starts with use keyword, use theme, and doesn't accept any argument for us, so I'll keep it like this. Now we'll create a state that will hold for us the theme value. Is it dark or light? So I'll call theme, then set theme, and by default I will set it to light mode. Okay, for now. Now next thing I want to do is I will have my use effect. And what I want to do with my use effect, I want it to trigger every time my theme changes. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because we're using Tailwind CSS, the way it works with the dark two dots I showed you before is that it look at your document, okay, your HTML, and it see does it have a class name dark, okay? That's how it knows which theme it should be using, okay? That means that every time we click that button to switch, we change the state and it is use effect to trigger, and the reason why is just because I need to set my class in my document. Okay, that is the reason. Now this is good. Now we need to add a function that will be triggering when we click that button, so I'll call it const toggle theme. Okay, and it will not return anything for us, so it will be void. And what we will do here, we'll just set the opposite whatever theme we have now, okay? If it's dark, set it to light. If it's light, set it to dark. Easy, okay? So that's the way we are doing it here in the line 11. Very simple. Now next thing is that we need to return whatever things we need from this custom hook. So in my use theme, I'll go back to my design. What I need both the function and the theme. And the reason why, I need the theme so I know right here which text I should show. Okay, for example, is it dark mode, is it light mode, and also the moon icon here. You can see here is different, so I need to know what theme I am in to know how to switch these ones. And then I need a toggle function because that will be the one triggering when the user clicks on this button. Okay, so I need to expose both of them, theme and toggle theme as well. That's good. Now what we can do is export default use theme. Now use theme custom hook is available to all our application. Now without TypeScript, if you just do whatever we have currently like this, that will work in JavaScript, okay? But in TypeScript, we have to add rules about what type that function will give us back, for example, right? So I have to tell every time what is going to render, what is a type. The argument also have to tell what type of argument is expecting, okay? So here we don't have any arguments, so all what I can do is it's giving us back void. And also here use theme, because giving us back these items, I have to define the type as well for the return items. And the way we can do it, I can come here and I know to be an array, right? And the first one is the theme state, and we know to be either light or dark. So I'll create here in a type theme interface, for example, and I'll say it's either light or dark. Okay, not just string, but it will be either light or dark. Okay, so I'll say that is the first type I'm returning. The second one, it will be just a function, because it starts, remember, the toggle function. So, and to give us back a void. Now, as soon as I do that, this one is complaining right here for me, okay? Because it's saying this one is a string, and reason why when you set up the state here, we didn't tell what is the type. So I can come here and I can say that will be type of theme I as well. And there we go. My editor now is happy and green. Nice. Now we'll go back to our button and we'll import used theme that we created. Okay. Oops. And we'll go inside our function and we'll try to access our custom hook. So const theme and toggle theme from use theme. Great. Now next thing is that we need just to style our button a little bit, and what I will do, I'll just paste the code so you don't see me typing everything. Now the handle on click function is the one will trigger when you click the button, okay? And I'll come here and I will define it. So const, that's my function. And what we will do is that we'll trigger this toggle theme whenever someone clicks that button. Great. Now second thing is that you can see here I have some icons and I just got them from my Figma file. So the way I do usually, I just go click it and I export as an SVG, then I open it and then I'll just go inspect and copy that SVG and create component for it. Okay, so for me I did that before for also other components as well, also other icons. So I'll just copy and paste them in my code. So I'll go inside components and paste. Okay, so these are icons I got from my Figma file. Okay, so I'll just go and export these and export that one as well. Okay, and one thing I do is that when I do that, I give them a property of class name, because you know sometimes you need to style them, you need different colors, you need to add margins or anything like that. So I make them more reusable and easy to manage as well. So I make sure I add this property of class name so I can modify them whenever I need to. Okay, so that's basically it. So we're just taking the theme. If it's dark, then of course I'm just displaying text of light. I don't have to do it as part of the design, but I think still it's a good idea to do it so the text is meaningful to the users. Then I'm just changing the icons right there. Okay, now let's save this and let's see if this works. We'll go back to our UI and let's hard reload this, and this is not working yet, and I think the reason why is that I did not import my button yet. So what I will do, I'll say theme button and let's save this, and this should fail, and yes, it is failing. Okay, and the reason why is because we're using here custom hooks, and we're using hooks. That means it needs to be a client-side component, and that is the reason actually we move it to a new component. So I'll say use client, and let's save this. And now you can see everything is happy. Let's go back to our UI, and there we go. Okay, so that is the dark mode. If I click it, that's the light mode. Okay, so I can see it, even I'm doing this is not working yet. Okay, and the reason why is we need to add something in our config in Tailwind CSS. Basically, Tailwind CSS, it handles the theming by default, but if you add some custom functionality like we did, so the user can switch the theming by themselves, then we have to tell Tailwind CSS to handle for us that too. So the way we can do it, we can just go inside our config and we'll say dark mode and we'll give it a property called class. Okay, so don't worry if so many things, it's just documentation. You just go in documentation, you read, and it's very simple and easy. Okay, so by default it's set to selectors, but if you want to do your own switching theme, you have to set it to class, so you have also control on that too. Now let's go back to our UI and let's hard refresh, and then let's set it to light, and there we go. You can see everything's working great. Okay, now we only can see the text which is not working properly. The color is not switching. So for example, because this is an overall design of all app, I don't have to do it in each and every element. I can just go to the global CSS file and do some magic from there. So we can go global CSS. Okay, and all what I have to do is tell it, oh my god, I lost my mouse. There we go. So we have to tell it that when we have a dark mode, I want the text to be white. Otherwise, I want it to be some black color or whatever. Okay. So the way you can do it is that you can access one of these utilities and change it. So the way you can do it, add layer, and this only because we're using Tailwind CSS, and I'm accessing the base. Okay. So whatever this base here, I'm going to access it and do some changes to it. So I will say the HTML, if it does not have class of dark, then apply. So that's how I can use the built-in classes in Tailwind in my CSS file. So you have to do add apply and then your class's name. So I'll say text, for example, slate, and the dark color of it, and font. By default, I want it to be thin. Okay. Now almost same thing we have to do, but when we have a HTML with dark class, what we'll do opposite. So text have to be white and font, I want it also to be thin. Okay, now let's go back to our UI, and there we go. Okay, so you can see here we have our button, and if I switch, you can see the text is dark color. Okay, and if we switch again, the text is white color. Okay, great. Now this thing we just have to fix a little bit here. So what I can do is that I can go to my header and I will add some styling. So I'll say class name text 2XL. Yeah, so I can get a bigger font size. Now I will go back to my UI. My mouse is playing with me today. There we go. So you can see now the font is bigger. Also, I want it to be bold. So I'll say font bold. Bold, and let's go back, and there we go. Great. Now what I will do, I'm done with this section, I will stop my command. Okay, and I will push this on the main branch, and that will be our start, and then we'll keep moving our next parts as well. Now I want to give you a few challenges here. The first challenge is that I want you to add some functionality to our use theme hook, so you can add so it can pick up your system theming. Okay, and I'll show you. If I say dark, turn on dark mode for apps. So if it's light, it should pick up that by default, and if it is dark, it should pick up that one also by default. Okay, at the moment I set it up to light by default and to users switch it. Okay, so I want you to stop this video, and before we move to the next section, go ahead and try to add a custom functionality that can pick up your system default behavior, default theming. Okay, and to give you a hint, if you check Tailwind CSS documentation for theming, they already have some code there waiting for you. You can just copy and paste it and do some changes here and there. Have fun. Now let's go and start the next section where we'll be building the list of the countries. I will jump this part here, filtering and searching, until we have actually the list of countries working properly, and then we will go back to this one. Okay, so the list of the countries, basically what we will do is that there are many approaches you can do. Okay, but for this video, what I will do is that I will just fetch all the lists, which is not great for performance, but I'll give you some tips in the end how you can improve that too, and also challenges for you on how to pick it up. So the way I will do it is that I will fetch all the list of the countries and store them in my Redux store, and then use them later for filtering or for search and everything. Okay, so through the life of the app, the performance will be much better because we will not be interacting with any other APIs, only for search and filtering. Okay, everything we already have it stored and cached for us using the RTK and the Redux store as well. But again, there are no perfect scenarios, right? So there are other options. I'll let you know as well on how you can improve this too. But there is always, no perfect scenario to go ahead with, okay? So for today, because also I want you to learn how to use Redux and RTK Query, I'm going with this approach for today. And if you have any comments and questions, please let me know in the comments section. Now, let's go and jump back to our code. So first thing, we need to install Redux Toolkit, okay? And if you go to documentation, you'll find plenty of information right there for you, okay? So first thing, because now we have an existing app, so we'll go and have to install npm Redux JS toolkit, and also we need to add React Redux, okay, because we're using a React application. So let me copy this command, and by the way, I will have to create a new branch that I will be running this section on it, which is section 3 dash countries list Redux, okay. So I'll go to my code now, and I'll install the needed dependencies. So first one, npm install Redux JS toolkit, and then I will go copy the other one too. And why I'm showing you this, because you need to learn how you can check the documentations and read them, okay? Things always are changing. Sometimes a small change as well, okay? Like I worked with Redux Toolkit just a few months ago. It's completely different than what it is right now, okay? So you have to get used to watching and learning from videos. But if things don't work out for you, go back and see how you can tweak it a little bit so it can work for you. Now let's go install the second package, which is React Redux. And while that one is getting done, what I will do first, when you're working with Redux, you have to do three things basically. First, you have to create something called slice, where you have your actions and reduces and everything, okay? Then the second part is create a provider that will provide the third thing we have to create, which is store. So you have a store provider, which provide all that store to your application, and then you have your slices, okay, for your features. So for our app today is simple. We only have one, which is countries. So we'll create one slice and connect it to our store. So first thing I will do is I will go right here, and I'll go actually inside my source folder, and I'll create a new folder called Redux. So there is no best approach, but I'm just doing this way so I know each code is for what. And inside my Redux, I'll create a new folder which called countries, which is my feature. Okay, and then inside there I will create my slice, which is countries slice.ts. Let me make this one smaller. So first thing is that create initial state, okay, and we need to import create slice from Redux Toolkit. Okay, so let's import that. Import create slice from Redux Toolkit. Okay, and then I'll create my initial state of my slice, const initial state, and you can call this anything you want. And I know, of course, I need countries. Okay, and countries will be set to an empty array by default. And the second thing I want is, for example, if you want to add loadings, you can add it as well, but I will add a few other things. I will need them later. So if you remember, we need to be able to search as well later. So I need the search input, okay? And also I need the search region string as well. So I'll set them up as well now, on top of them later of this video. So I'll call it search query, Okay, so whatever the user input in the search, okay, to have a string, empty string, and then region filter, I'll set it by default to all because I want all countries. And then I want a new state should be actually the filtered countries. So we will have the initial all list of countries stored, if you remember. And then I said I will use that so I can filter it. So I need a new state that will hold for me the new filtered list, okay? Because I don't want to touch that country state at all. It will be like just there sitting, waiting for me to use it whenever I want to, okay? So I'll call it filtered countries. Now, because I'm using TypeScript, I have to do this extra thing now, which adding the interfaces, okay? So basically, I need to add interface for everything I'm creating. So I'm creating a country state interface, and I will tell that my initial state will be in this type, okay? And the second thing I need to do is for the countries, I have to tell also how it will look like, okay? So not to be array, but array of what? So it will be array of this type, and this is the type I'm just using at the moment, okay? Now we have this initial state, so it's saying, it's complaining about a value there that I don't have. You can see that's when TypeScript is very handy. I don't have country in my initial state, so this complaint is missing. So I'll just remove this, we don't need it now. And that should be okay. Now next thing is to create our slice const, and you can call it anything you want. I'll call it countries slice, and it will be equal to create slice that we imported from Redux Toolkit, okay? And this one, it accepts an argument with an object. The first value, it will be the name of your slice, okay? And you can call it anything you want. I'll call it countries. Then the second argument will be your initial state, okay? And you can do initial state then whatever initial state you create here. But because the namings are the same, I can just do a comma, a shortcut. And then next thing is reducers, okay? And that's where you'll define your actions and reducers, what they will be doing, okay? Now, the first action I need is the one I need when the API is called. It's to set up my countries list, okay? So I will call it set countries. By default, to accept a current state as argument, okay? Then the second one will be the action that you'll be triggering, okay? Now, because I am using TypeScript, I have to do one small extra step, and I need to define what is the type of this action, okay? So the type will be a payload action, okay, that I have to import from Redux, okay? Payload action, okay? And this payload action, I'm saying that will be of type country I but an array, okay? So that is the type of the action you'll be passing in here, okay? Now that is done, so that will be an arrow function, okay? And then what we want to do, okay, we get this action which gives us actually the API response. What we want to do is that we want to set the state, okay, with the details given to us. So the way we can do it, we can just do state dot countries equal action dot payload. Easy as that, okay? And also I'll keep always my filtered countries also having the same value. Action dot payload. Because in our UI we'll be actually reading this. This one here is only for keeping it there, like I said before, in our state. We will not be touching it at all. So the filtered countries, that will be the one updated every time. Later we use also the filter. Now we have our set countries ready. Now next thing we have to do is that expose our reducers and actions. And because we use this create slice from Redux Toolkit, it gives us those functions built in and ready for us just to use, okay? So first thing, let's export default our countries slice.reducer. Then we'll export our actions, and we have for now set countries. Just say const here. Set countries, and we'll be exporting it from tree_slice.action. Great. Okay, so now we have our reducer ready, we have our actions ready. Next thing I want to do is create an action, okay, and make sure that action help me to actually fetch the data using an API. So I told you before, you do two approaches. The first one will be RTK Query, okay, and you can go to the documentation and just give it a read through. It's very easy and simple as well, and it's very handy and it helps with performance and caching your data and everything like that. So we'll be using that as well. So let's go back to our code. And first thing we have to do is we need to import something called create API from the Redux Toolkit, okay? And we can go on the top and I'll say import create API, and it will be the one here, okay, from Redux Toolkit /query/react. Now we go back down here and let's create our action, and let's first name it anything you like again, okay, so I'll call it export const countries API, okay. You can call it also get countries API, anything you like. So I'll say that's create API, and that accept an argument which is an object, okay. And the first one is the reducer path, and reducer path I will call it countries API. You can call it anything you want. Now next thing you'll see is that it accepts something called base query, okay, and that will add the base URL for our API. So I'll say base query, and it's we say fetch base query, and we have to import that as well, and then I'll paste there the API endpoint I have. So I'll just copy it and we'll say it's an object, okay, and it accepts a base URL, and that is the API I'll be using to retrieve all the lists, okay. But this API, the new version they have, I have to do /all, okay, but I'll not put the all there, okay, and I'll show you where it will go. Now I will do comma, then I will say endpoint, and then inside my endpoint accept something called builder. You don't need to really understand what this builder does, okay. We just have to use it, basically, simple and easy. Now I will call my API endpoint get all countries, okay. Then I'll call my builder and I'll say dot query, okay, and this query basically I have to give it a type, what I'll be getting back, and I know I'll be getting back a country I interface, but an array of countries, okay, and void. Now inside here I will have again two properties. The first one is the query, okay, and that query there I'll put arrow function pointing to all. So it will append all for me after my API endpoint. And the second thing, it will be my actual function. So it will be async function, okay. I'll say on query started, okay. So when your query started, when your API call started, so we'll accept something called dispatch and also query fulfilled, okay. So when your query is completed and fulfilled, the other properties as well, feel free to read the documentation if you want to learn more in depth about RTK query, or look at for my video. Will be actually explaining each and every lane here, how it work and why as well. So we'll go back here and we'll say okay const, and we'll access our data from our API, await equal await and query fulfilled. Okay, so I wait for our query until it's finished. And when it's finished, I will dispatch the action we created up there, if you remember. So I'll just copy the action name and I'll dispatch it right there. Okay, and it accepts one argument, which is your data. Great, that's it. So we have our actions ready. We have our slice ready as well. Now we just have to do one more thing where we have to export our countries API as a hook, okay? And I'll just quickly paste a few lines of code here, okay? So all what we are doing is that we are exporting whatever generated hook for us depending on the API we create. So you remember here we say get all countries, okay? So what it does for us, the RTK, it creates a hook based function for us that we can use inside our functional component. And what it does, it add use to it, okay? Then the G make it capital, then query in the end also is appended to it. And we are saying this one is coming from our countries API. Now one more thing I will do, and this one you can actually create a different file for it, but I'll just keep it the same, okay? So what I'll say, create my selectors, okay? And what these selectors do, basically, they help you to get whatever states you need, okay? For example, I want these countries in one component. I need the selectors to help me find that countries in my state, okay? And they are very helpful as well because they help with the performance of your application too. For example, if you have very complex components and one of them is reading one property in your state and you only want it to change because that single property changes, the selectors will help to monitor the prop change and compare them before and after to make sure that it worth to re-render it or not, okay? In very simple lanes. Now, let's create our selectors, and what I will do, I will just copy and paste few lanes here and I'll explain what I'm doing. So all what I'm doing is that I'm defining a new select search query, for example, to access the search query. Same for the region filter class and same for the filtered countries class, okay? And these always have access to your current state. So the state here is whatever your current state of your reducer, okay? So they have the ability to access it all the time. And I have to give it a type because I'm using TypeScript. If you're using only JavaScript, you don't have to do this. But because of TypeScript, I do have to add the interface of my root state, okay? And this root state I'll create actually later in my store, and then we'll import it here. Now we are done with our country slice. So what I will do, I create a new store file here, okay, under my Redux folder, and that's where we'll create our actual store. And because we're using Next.js in combination with TypeScript, so it's a bit different the way you may do it in normal Create React app with JavaScript, okay? But again, that version is much simpler. That's why I take this approach today so you can learn more on how you can do this. So first thing which will be everywhere is that you need to create your store. So we need to import configure store from Redux Toolkit, okay? And then what I will do, I'll import the country APIs and also the reducer I created in my slice, okay? So I want to access this one and also I want to access the reducer, okay? So you always have to link those to your store in Redux. So let's import, let's say first countries API, okay? And let's import countries reducer from countries / country slice as well. Great. Now we go and make our store. So say export const make store. That will be an arrow function. And then it will return for us our store with some configuration, okay? So return configure store, and that will be a function with an argument of an object, okay, which have reducer as the first property. And here usually you list all the reducers in your application. Lucky for us, we almost have only like 2 The one is the main slice and the second one for the countries API, because that's a different way of creating reducer. So we also have to link it separately. So countries API, because we use RTK, you do it this way. So countries API dot reducer path. Okay. And we will say it is countries API dot reducer. The second thing is our actual country slice. So we call it countries, and that will be countries reducer. Okay, so that's the countries reducer, and this one is your countries API reducer. Now, we created our reducer. Second thing is that we need to add an API middleware that will enable our caching and validation and polling. Okay, and that's why we use RTK Query. And this next lanes are only for RTK Query. Okay, if we didn't have this RTK Query, we don't have to do it. Okay, we'll just stick to this method if you're using async thunk, which we'll do later in this video as well. Now, what we have to do is we call something called middleware. Okay, accept an arrow function with accept an argument. We call it get default middleware. Okay, and in return, we'll say, okay, trigger that default middleware as a function, then concat that to my countries API reducer. So countries API dot middleware. Great. Now this is complaining, and I think I missed something here. So I don't need this, I don't need that, and there we go. Okay. Infer the type of my make store. Okay, so that is only because I'm using TypeScript. I have to do these lanes. If you're only using JavaScript, you are safe from this extra code. So basically all I'm doing is that I'm defining the type of my app store and also my root state. Okay, what is my root state type, and also my app dispatch type as well. Okay, and this only because I'm using TypeScript and I have to do it. Now this is good. Now next thing what I want to do is I need to fix this, and I need to import root state here on the top. Root state, and that's I'll be importing from my store, and now everything is green. Great. So we created our slice, we create our store. Next thing we need to do is create our store provider. Okay, and that will be in the root of our app. Okay, so I'll go here, app, and I'll create my store provider dot tsx. And my store provider, basically, I'll just create a provider like usually you will do with, for example, context API, and wrap my application with it. Now, the store provider, it has to be a client side, and that's why I'm making it different component, and I'll bring it to my root of my project. Okay, so I'll just copy some code here. So first I'm saying it's use client, okay? And this is the main reason, again, these components have to be clients because we'll be using useRef, okay? And that will help us basically to wrap our application with the store and make it accessible to all our pages and components in our application, okay? Now I will save this, and then I will have to go inside pages.tsx, and I will have to import my provider. Import store provider, and then I will have to wrap my application with that. Okay, so I'll come here, I'll say store provider, and then I'll wrap my application with it. Okay, great. Now this is done. Actually create our list of countries component that will trigger this API call for us and list for us all these countries. So we go back to our code, and I created a new file called countries and the components and index.tsx, and there's nothing at the moment. So first thing is that this component will be a client-side component. The reason why is that because we'll be using some hooks, and whenever you use hooks, you can't use them on a server side. So we'll start with use client. Then we'll import React from React. Then we have to import few of things that we created, okay? So we want to access few things from our country slice. The first thing is that we need to access this API here, okay? So we can trigger it and get the data back. And we'll be using this hook that we had get generated using the RTK query for us, okay? So that's first thing. Second thing, we need a way to access this state here, okay, because that's the one we'll be using to display our countries list in our UI. So for that, we'll be using this selector right there that we created that is pointing to our state.countries dot filtered countries. Great. So we have to import those things from our in our component. So I'll go back here. So use get all countries query, which is our API call, and this is a selector which helps us to select our state. Next thing is that we need to import use selector from Redux, React Redux, because this selector here, you can't just trigger it, you have to wrap it within the use selector. Okay, now let's create our component. So const, our call is countries. That will be an arrow function. It does not accept any argument at the moment. So first thing, I need to trigger this API call, and it's very simple and easy. So all what we can do is that I want to access also the loading state that RTK query have built in, and I can access it. So const then is loading. You can also access is pending, error, and many other states as well. And we will say use get all countries query. Simple as that. The good thing is that we don't have to wrap this in use effects or anything. Your component by itself, when you see this hook first, it will wait for it until it's finished, then it will process the next the UI render block for us. Okay, so I'll say now const, and I'll try to access my state. So I'll call it filtered countries. You can call it anything you like. It's just a variable creating. Then we'll access use selector, and then we'll trigger the selector we created in our slice. Nice. Now what I want to do is that I want to handle the loading state, and I'll keep it very simple for now, and up to if you want to change this and add some spinner or anything. So if it's loading, I'm going to return a div, and I'll say loading. And let me add some class name to make it a little bit big. Now that's if it's loading. Otherwise, I want to return my UI. And my UI, basically, I will have list of countries, okay? So if I open the design, it's list of countries. So this part here, it will be a component, which will be a reusable component. We'll be mapping through our state and running that component for us, okay? So we have to go and create this component here. So I will go to my component and I'll create a new folder called country card. And then I will just create my component here, and let's generate a country card. Okay, so this country card, it will accept few arguments because we are passing data to it as it's a reusable card. Now I don't want you to see me typing everything, okay, so I will just paste the code and go through it with you. So basically what we are doing is we have here the interface. For using JavaScript, you don't need to do that. And this interface just to make sure my component knows what is the type of my properties. Okay, so the design, this card will accept flag details. It needs the URL for the image, is it PNG or SVG, whatever. The alt text as well, and then the title, population, region, and capital. Okay, so those are the properties it's expecting from here, and they're coming back from your API. You'll be reading them from the API. Now this part here we don't need at this point. I will comment it. We need it later in this video, so I'll just comment this. Then here basically will be just, I'll move this to, so we are just rendering our components, basically just styling. I'm using Tailwind CSS to achieve whatever UI I have. The only little bit different thing here, or a little bit tricky maybe for you, is again the theming, and it's very simple. Again, it's just the background of my card. If I'm on dark theme, I want it to be dark color, otherwise it will be white. And basically that's it. So we'll go back to our component here and import country card from country card, and then we'll come right here and we'll try to map through our component. Okay, so what I will do, I'll just paste this again here, just this purpose of styling. Because you can see here the layout, we have a grid layout which have 4 elements on big screens, but if you go in smaller screens, then it's having only single item by row. Okay, and of course between the mobile and desktop you have to handle also the tablet view to make sure it's not crashing. So what I have done, I use Tailwind CSS. Again, I'm using grid. I'm saying small screens, it should be only 1. In large screens, I want to see 4. But in mid-sized screens, I want to have 3 by row. Okay, and this one here just to have the spacing between my cards. Great. Now let's save this and see what we are getting. Let's go back to our UI, and I'll just hard refresh this. And this is not responding. I think I have an error as well in my UI. And silly me, I create my component, but I forgot to export it. So export default countries. And let's see what that does. Just make sure, again, whenever in your React and you're mapping and rendering something, you have to add this key here, okay? And it has to be unique because it helps with the performance of your application as well. And it helps your React component to know which items been rendered and which ones are not. It's a way like to track your component. So make sure always you're mapping, you add that key and it should be unique. Let's save this. Let's go back to our UI. It's loading, okay. Now next thing is complain about, because I'm using Next.js, it has some rules about rendering your image, okay, when using Next image. So because our links, our APIs, it have some images coming from different domains, we need to add configurations for them in our next.js.config. So let's go back there and we open next.js.config, okay, and we will add some configuration right there. And basically all what we are doing is we're adding images and the next config, and then with this property called remote patterns, then you can put the list all of the host names you're using that your Next.js you wanted to allow to be used. So I'll save this and I'll go back to our UI, and hopefully there's nothing else left. Loading, nice. And this is our UI rendering as expected as per the design. If we check the theme, dark and light, so you can see these ones are working, but the background here is not working yet. Okay, so let's go back to our countries, and I think I need to go one level. What I can do, I can just fix this from the layout itself, because my other pages also will have the same effect. So what I will do, I'll change this class name here, use the backticks, and what I will say, when it's dark mode, I want PG slate, and let's say for example 800, and then otherwise PG white, and then just paste whatever the dynamic class I had before. Okay, also another thing I noticed is that our UI is sticking to the corners. I want to be wrapped with the same class, which was the container. So what I will do, I'll go back here and I'll go to page, and let's see, we'll add the class right there. Okay, I'll remove all these things because I don't need them, and I'll just do container. Container. There. Okay, we have my spellings. So let's go back to our UI, and there we go. Now this looks amazing. The UI is working as expected. Let's switch the theme, and there we go. So all looks good. And one more thing is that it's check responsive. So you can see, even if I make it big, small, it's not breaking. Now it's 3 in the row because 4 will not look good, and then 1 in smaller windows as well. Okay, so this is amazing. Up to now, you're able to fetch API details using RTK Query and build a responsive UI to display all the lists of your countries. Now, I got a challenge for you. The API we're using is countries API, okay? And at the moment, if I paste this, it's a long response, okay? And let's beautify actually this. I'll use JSON beautify. And let's reformat this. So I'll just paste this. And you can see, okay, so for example, this is your first country. And you can see only first country, there are almost 188 rows, let's say, okay? And most of the fields here, I don't need them. I'm not using them, okay? You can see there's so many things right there. All this data I don't need in my first screen, okay? In my first screen, all what I need is the country name, the population, the region, and the capital. That's all. That's all what I need. 4 fields plus the fifth one, which is the image, okay? If we let's go back to their documentation, you'll see that they have a few filterings, okay, using some fields property and so on. I want you to go and read this documentation and update our code, which we've built right here, okay. And all what I wanted, instead of all, I wanted only to come back with the fields that we need. This will have a big, huge impact on your performance because you don't need all that dummy information that is not useful to your app at the moment. So you don't need to get them, okay? So go ahead, have a read to RTK Query documentation, okay? Play around and see if you are successful at this point and share with us your experience in the comment section. Have fun. Okay, now we get list of countries. Let's move to the section we jumped off and let's start building our filters. And let's start by the search per country by name. Okay, so the code for this section you'll find in this branch, section 4 filter by name. Okay, and I'll go and open my Visual Studio Code. And first thing is that we need to create a component which holds for us the search bar. So I'll call it search bar. And also index.jsx. Oh, not JSX, but TSX. Graph CE, and let's call it search bar. Okay, and what I will do, I need two elements for the search here. I need the one on the left and the one on the right. So I'll create component for each one of them, okay, to make sure it is readable. So first thing will be search by or search input field. Let me copy that name, and then let's create our component index.tsx and ref.ce. I'll just call it that, and I'll import it in my UI. So import search input from search input, and I'll just add it right there. And then we just save this. Okay, and one more thing to do here. I just want to wrap it. Say class name. And also margin Y, so up and down, because I don't want it to stack to my header and to my list of countries. So up and down 10, okay, which kind of 40 pixels up and down. Because if you look at our design, we have a huge space here and there, okay. Now, let's go back to our search input, okay. And first thing you have to do is this component will not be again server side, because whenever you have interaction with a user, that component has to be a client side. So I will go up and add use client, and then we want to create this component, and I will add type for it. I did not do an other component, but I should do so. So I'll say react.fc, okay, and then we will come inside our return because we want now an input field, okay. And what I will do again, this is just a UI, so I just created some elements. So we have a div which will have a text gray, and when we focus also, I'm just adding some styling as well, okay. Now this is an icon that I imported from my Figma file, which is that search icon on the left of my search input. And now this search term and handle search, we have to create them. Okay, so first thing is that the search term, we have to create a state, a local state for our component, and we'll call it useState. And then I'll say const search term, and then I'll say set search term. That will be coming from the useState, and the default value will be an empty string. Okay. Now, next thing we want to do is we need a way or an action to build first that will help us to update our state in Redux. Okay, so you remember that's the one that's the source of our truth. So that is the one we want to update every time someone is trying to search. Okay, so at the moment before we created only these, but what I did, I added other actions, and I didn't want you to see me typing. In the end, they're just JavaScript. So the first one is search query, and that's the one we need for this section. Okay, and you'll be searching by the input that the customer writes. What we are doing here basically is that we are accepting a string. So whatever the customer writes or types in our input field, okay, then we are updating our search query in the state with that search term that the user is typing. Okay, and after that we are going and to filter our countries, okay, and checking if any name in our country, make sure it's lowercase and also the input lowercase, because this comparison it is a case sensitive. Okay, so whatever the country name, compare it and see if it includes some part of the input that came from the user. Okay, if it does, then return that for us in the filtered countries. Simple as that. Okay, and of course we created a new action, so we have to make sure we are exposing that to our store so we can access it as well. Okay, and remember also before we created other selectors, so that's the one here we will be also accessing also from our component. Now we go back to our component right here. Now we have to do is import a dispatch functionality that will help us to dispatch our actions. As selectors, you can't just trigger them immediately, you need a wrappers around them. So we import useDispatch from Redux, React Redux. Okay, then we'll go here and create an instance of it. We'll call it dispatch. You can call this one also anything you want, and I'll say useDispatch. And now what I will do, one more step ahead. Okay, so this is not for beginners, but it's very simple and easy. So when it comes to performance, okay, I don't want that every time my customer write a letter or type something on my keyboard, it's trigger this action. And if you have an API, it means it will trigger an API call. But what I want for my system to wait is if a user is a fast typer, for example, I want the system to trigger that action or the API call, for example, only when it feels that customer is done with writing, okay, or with typing. So that helps with performance. To do that, it's very simple. It's very simple. We can import something from React called useDeferredValue. Oops. Called useDeferredValue. And then we can come here, and what we will do is we will create a new variable, okay, called deferred searched input equal useDeferred, and we will pass it our state that the customer is typing. Okay, so this one will also only update only when the system feels that it is the time to update and the user finished typing. Okay, when that one done, then you'll use that value actually to trigger our search. Now our deferred value is created. I want this deferred value to be re-updated every time my user inputs something, okay? And whenever also I dispatch some action as well. So what I can do is import useEffect, and then I'll come right here, and I'll say I want this useEffect, okay, to trigger every time my deferred value input has changed and also my dispatch action get triggered. Okay, now I'll just update this one here, and this one here is the action we created right there in the slice. Here we go. set search query. Okay, so I want my use effect to every time trigger an update whenever that dispatch is triggering as well. And I need to import this. So I'm going to import it from our country slice. Okay, and this one, of course, I have to update it. It's not correct spelling. And there we go. So that part is done. We handle our search input uh, search, okay, and we also try to handle some performance as well with that. Now, next we want to do, of course, is set the search term, right? Until now, we are not doing anything yet. So that will happen whenever someone starts typing on your input field. So I'll come here, say const, and that will be an arrow function which accepts the element by default from your input. And because I am using TypeScript, I need to give it a type, which should be React.event change. Oops, me and my spellings change event actually. Okay, and I'll be change event of my HTML input element. And this function, all it will does for us is just set our search term state. Okay, so we'll pass it the e.target.value. That's it. So I got few red things here. I'm just trying to figure out where is the red line, or maybe I'm just too blind to see it. Okay, let me Prettier is not happy, so just let me do this. And I'll say one more level up, and I'll say redux dot countries dot country slice. Okay, and let's check if our UI will complain at some point from anything from here. Now, this is search input created. We have it here also. Now let's go to our UI and see if this is working. So just hard refresh, and I can see it's not there. That's mean I didn't import actually my search bar inside my page.js. So I'll go here, or just import it right there, and I need to import it. And I have to make sure it's inside my store provider, okay? So it have access to my selectors and my state and everything there. Now let's save this, and let's go back here, make sure everything's right, and let's go back to our UI, and let's hard refresh. Okay, there we go. So there is a problem here, okay? And I know now why my linter was complaining. I forgot here my equal sign. Oh my god, that's an arrow function. Now let's go back to our UI, and let's hard refresh again. And there we go. You can see our search input field right there, okay? And that is our list of countries. Now, so let's go to my search input field, and here I will say, okay, my BG, I want it to be of the slate in the dark mode. Otherwise, it will be BG white. Okay, now let's go back to our UI. You can see already that theme is handled here. So I'm using the dark BG is dark gray, and the text is white. Otherwise, background is white, and the text will be of very dark gray. Now let's test now our functionality if it's working as expected. So what I will do, Alt, for example, you can see it's working. Okay, let's keep Morocco. That's the flag of Morocco, and also the details coming as expected. Now you can see the performance also great, things are faster. So let's say, for example, Australia, and you don't see any flickering a lot, okay? The reason why is that while I'm typing, if I'm fast, it will not trigger the search when I type A, then type U, then type S, which means 3 times. If that happens, you have a lot of flickering in your screen, and sometimes your UI, if it's like huge data and huge application, it will stuck. Your screen will just stuck there, and then we may have screen of that, okay? And that's the reason we use a deferred value. Next part we'll be building is this filter here on the right side. So basically you'll be able to filter your country list by the region, and we have here 5 regions, okay? So this code will be on this branch, section 5, filter by region, if you want to start from this section of this course. Now let's go back to my branch, Okay, and I need to check out actually that new branch I created. So I will go and copy it and go fetch, get fetch to get the latest on my logo. Oops, spelling, get fetch, and then get check out this branch. Okay, and let's start from there. I'll just open the folder screen. So first thing we need to do is let's look at the design. So in the same bar that we created before, we had this input field added there. Now we'll create this component and import it within our bar component. So let's go back our project. I'll go inside component. I'll create a new folder. I'll call, for example, filter regions. Then create my components index.tsx. And then let's generate my component here, and I'll call it also filter regions. Great. And what I want to do, I want to import this one into bar component that we created before. So I would say filter regions, and it will import it for me too. So that is great. That's all what we need from this side. So I'll close this component here, and also I'll close the search input field as we don't need it anymore. Great. Now this is our filter region. So what we need is we need a drop down basically to be created there. Okay. And because it will be a user interaction component, we need to have it on the client side. So we have to tell Next.js that it is a client component. So we say use client. Okay. And then we need a list of regions. Okay. So I will hard code them and add them right here. Okay, so these are the 5 regions we have. And then now inside my component, what I will do is I will try first to build the HTML first. And what I will do, I'll just paste it because in the end it's just HTML CSS. I don't want to see me typing each and every lane. So all what we are doing is we have a div element, and that's just for style purpose. Then you have your select, which is your drop down, okay? And then this one which held that chevron, which is the arrow pointing down in our UI, in our drop down, okay? And then here we just have the default option, which is all regions. And then we have the list of the regions, okay? And like you can see, you always have a key whenever you're mapping. And because the region name is unique, we can use that one for the key, okay? And then the value should be more interested at to get the value from the user select to know which region it is. And then we just display the region name as well, okay? Now, because here I'm expecting a class name because I want to style this component, but keep in mind like reusability wise. So whatever I style, I want to do extra. I don't want it to be for this component, but depends of the layout. And you can see, for example, here the components are right, okay? So that will not be all the time if you have a big application that this component reusable. So what I do, I'll take this one as a property, which will come from the parent component, okay? Which means I need to define a type, okay? So my component again is a React component, okay? And I can do also a type from here for my props, and I'll say I'm expecting a prop of class name, a prop name, class name, sorry, and it will be type of string, and that one also is not it's optional, it's not a mandatory one as well, okay? So now next thing I'll go to my bar component and I will add a class here, okay? I'll say margin left auto, and because the parent will be flex, okay, that will make sure that this component will go into the right side. Okay, let's save this and let's go back to our region. Okay, now let's see how we can access or update our Redux and access it as well. So the first thing we need to do is whenever a user type or no, whenever a user selects an option, okay, I want to pick up that value and set my state in my country slide, okay. Now the one thing what I did here, I created an action which calls set region, okay? And that action basically it accepts an action of type string, which will be whatever the user select, right? Our region name. Then what I'm doing, I'm set in the state of region filter to whatever the user selects, okay? Then also same time I'm filtering my countries, okay? And I'm making sure that I'm getting back only the countries which have the region it is whatever that action payload is coming, okay? And also what I'm doing is that if the user types something as well in the search field, it's picking up both of them, okay? And maybe that's a change for you as well later. There will be some bugs here and there between the search and the filter. I didn't want to go in details, but I want you to stop this video at the end of this section and go play around and see if you can find bugs and fix them, because that will be a learning curve for you and help you to learn how to debug as well. If you find any issues, just let me know in the section, in the comment section, and I'll be able to help you if you're stuck at some point in it. Okay, now this is our action created. I also expose it and make it available for me. Now I can go and import this in my component. Okay, so I'll come here, I'll say import my action from, so I need Redux / countries / my country slice. Okay, and if you remember again, any action you need to trigger, you need to wrap it within a use dispatch hook. So we have to import that as well. Use dispatch from React Redux. Okay, and then we'll come inside here, and we want this event to trigger whenever you select something. So we will be listening to onChange event of the select of the dropdown, and we will trigger this function that I will define it inside my component. Okay, and by default, whenever you trigger this function from onChange event, you have access by default to your elements. Okay, so I will have that as an argument, and I have to give it a type of React.change event, and then which element it is, it will be HTML select element. Okay, oops, and I need to close that. My editor playing with me. And it will not give us back anything, so it's a void. And then what we want to do is we want to dispatch this action right there. So I have to first create an instance of my dispatch. So const dispatch equal use dispatch. Okay, and I have something wrong here, not this one. It should be lowercase u. Okay, and now this dispatch, I'll use it right inside my onChange event. Okay, and I'll pass my action set region filter, and my action accepts one argument. If you remember, it takes one argument, which is your action. Okay, type string should be our element value. So e.target.value. Great, so I think all this good. I try also to handle the styling between the dark mode and the light mode as well. So it works in both themes. Now let's go back to our UI and let's go to our project and let's hard refresh. And there we go. My monitor is not playing good today, so it's difficult to see, but my search on the left and my regions top down the right. And maybe that's one thing for you. Maybe you can go ahead and fix whatever little bit issues with the UI as well. So I will click this one. I will check, for example, Africa. And there we go. I can see list of all the countries in Africa. Okay. And let's say, for example, I want to select Oceania. There we go. You can see all the countries in Oceania. So this is working really as expected at the moment. Now, I selected the filter. Then if I go and search, you can see the search. If you try to search after you select a region, that is a bug. It's not working. That is your challenge. I want you to go and fix it. Okay. So for example, Morocco, it is in Africa. Okay. It's not in Oceania. Same for Comoros. Okay. Now, if I try to clear everything, okay, I get all my, and that's another bug, it's not working. It's easy to fix, but I'm not going to fix it. I want you to fix it. So if you select all regions, you are not getting all your list back. Now, if I try, for example, I search for Morocco, okay, and then I go and select Europe, that is working. So if you search and then select your filter, it's working. But if you select your filter, then you search by the country name, that is a bug, it's not working. Okay, so stop this video before we move on to the next section. Go ahead and fix it, and the code I'll be pushing it in the section 5, filter by region branch. Okay, now let's move to the next section. We will be displaying the details of a country. So how this works basically, whenever you click an item here, okay, for example, I click Algeria, I should be navigated back to another screen where I can see the more details about that country, okay. Also, I should have a back button that when I click, it takes me back to the country. Great. So the code for this section will be on this section 6-country details branch, and I'll keep all the links for you in the description. Now let's go back to our code, and first thing we want to do is we want to go to the country card, okay, and if you remember, that is the card we use to display country details, okay. And what we want to do is we want to add an on-click event, so when we click on the card, it takes us to another screen, okay. So I'll add here on-click event, okay, and on-click event will accept a function which I already defined before that I commented, okay. It's called handle navigation, okay. And basically what handle navigation will do is that we will access our router and it will push us to a next path that we want to go. So to do that, we need to import useRouter from next/navigation, and please be careful because there's also next/router, but we need to use next/navigation, okay. The next thing is that you go back inside your component and you make an instance of your router. And then inside that handle navigation that triggers on the click, we just say a router.push, and this is the new path I'm going to create, okay? So whenever I click on any card, I want to go to country/, for example, Australia, country/Morocco, country/Egypt, okay? Now, I don't have this router yet, so I have to create it. So the way we can do that is that we can go inside our app, okay, and I will create a new folder called countries. And the good thing for the routers in Next.js is that folder based, okay, so these countries will be my /countries. Good. Now inside my /countries, I will create a file, okay, and actually not a file, I'll create a folder and I will do bracket, okay, then inside I'll call country name. So if this looks strange to you, this is called dynamic routing in Next.js, okay? And when you do that bracket, the square bracket, and the name inside, that means that name inside, it is a dynamic name, okay? In your path, it will not be /country name, it will be / whatever the actual country name is, like country/Australia, like I said, or country/Egypt, okay? So this is called dynamic routing. So inside there, I'll create my file, and it needs to be page.gsx or tsx, okay? So when the Next.js look at this structure, you have folder and under it page.js, x or tsx, it knows this is actually a page and will handle it as a router by default, okay? So I'll call page.tsx. Oops, tsx. Okay, now inside our page tsx, I want to create my component, okay? Now this component have to be dynamic, and what we'll do is I'll keep it server-side component, and the reason why it will do that, I will do that is because in the server it will look up for all the countries we have, and it will create all those pages for us for each and every country, and keep it ready for us whenever we want to use it. Okay. Now what I will do, I will just paste this code and I will take it very simple. Okay, forget the down bottom. So all what we are doing at the moment is that we are importing image because we need to display an image, okay? And then I'm importing back button component. And that back button component, it just in the design, remember the back button, we need to navigate back to another screen. That is it, okay? So it's nothing much, so I'll go and create that component, okay? And all what it does is it's using again the router, okay, and the router from Next/navigation. And when we click on it, we are just pushing back to the home page. That's all what it does. And it needs to be client, and that is the reason I move it out of this country details page, okay? Because I want to keep it server side, so help with the performance and also SEO search. And only because of the back button, if I keep all this code inside here, I have to make all the components a client-side component, and it's not worth it. Okay, so this is better for me. I move the small code to separate component, make that one alone, use client, and keep my whole page as server-side component. Okay. So next thing is that we're just trying to access some details you'll get from API and display them all here, okay? So all this is just again styling, making the grids because I have layouts on the left, on the right, and display image and country name as per the design. Then again, I need on the right side 2 grids to display the details as per the design, okay? That's all it is. Now, you must be wondering how we got the country details, okay? Now in Next.js, things has changed recently. It was much different before, but it's same idea. So first thing is that you need to run a function, okay, which called get static params. And what it does is, let me remove all these comments. And what it does is basically it fetch all the countries. And you can see here, I try to enhance that API call. Okay, I don't want to get all the details because I only need the name to create the path. Okay, so I use that API endpoint to get all countries, but only with the field of name. Turn it to JSON. Okay, then I'm mapping through the countries and I'm using this name. It's same the name here. Okay, so I'm saying, okay, create a param for each page, which is called country name, and assign it the name of the country. Okay, that's all. That's what it is. So it creates all these pages for us and make sure this param is available for us as well. Then here I have an async function, simple JavaScript function. Okay, or what it does is just get my country details. So you can see here I used this one from the documentation of the page you have in the link. Okay, and I'm passing the country name I'm getting back from my params. Okay, very easy, very straightforward. Now the way it worked is when you run this generate static params, it creates for you this parameter here, right? And that one by default your component will have access to it. So you don't have to worry where we'll get it from, okay? So you can see here my country is accepting these params and we have to make it async component as well, okay? And all up here it just interfaces for the parameters I'm using and also for the response I'm getting back as well. So if using JavaScript, you don't have to do this and you don't have to do this as well. Now, in the params, I will have access to my country name, okay, that I generated down below in that get static params. And then I'm going to get my API call function triggered and I'm passing my country name and that will give me my country details, okay? Then just to be safe, I'm waiting for the promise to resolve, okay? And then my return function of our actual component will work. Very simple, very easy, very straightforward. Okay, if you feel this is confusing, then don't worry about it because I'll be creating full series only about how to work with Next.js and RTK and dynamic routing as well. So now let's go back and test this and see if this is working. We go back our UI and let's hard reload and let's click, for example, Grenada. And there you go. You got your details page ready. Okay, this is the details I'm displaying from the API. That's my image and that's my back button. And if I click my back button, it should take me back to the home page and load all the countries for me. Now let's try another one. If I click Taiwan, same thing. And you see this time it's much faster because all the routes now are created and ready for me to pull. Now let's try something with 2 words. And there we go, it's working as expected. And why is that? Because you remember here when I said push the name, I'm trimming, okay? So I make sure there's no space, white spaces in my words. Now This looks great and amazing at the moment. So I will stop now right here for this project, okay? And this is actually also responsive, by the way. So if I go and inspect and I resize it, you can see it is also working as expected, okay?